Hey there, I'm Ken, this is Canadian Retro Things, welcome. Today, it's time to do a little work on one of my CoCo 3s. What exactly am I going to do to my CoCo 3, you ask? Well, I'm going to be putting this new keyboard circuit board in it. But wait a second, you say. Didn't I put one of these in a CoCo 3 last year? Yes, I did. Good memory. This one, however, is a little bit different. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to install this in my other CoCo 3, and then I am going to compare them because this is the quieter version. The other one that I put in last year was the clicky version. So then I can compare and contrast them. But before I do that, I have to give a big thank you to the sponsor of today's video, PCBWay. If you have a project like the Keyfix 3 that you want to bring to life, I'd suggest getting the PCBs printed at PCBWay. Not only do they have a fast build time, it can be as little as 24 hours, they also cost as little as $5 for 10 boards. If your project requires an odd shape for the PCB, they can do that as well. PCBWay can help you make that perfect project to add to your retro system. Visit www.pcbway.com. And this is the CoCo 3 that I'm going to be putting the new keyboard PCB into. If you've been watching my channel, you may recognize this as my cursed CoCo 3. This is the CoCo 3 that I picked up at CoCo Fest 2022. It was in non-working order. I tested it out at the show and it did not work. When I got it home and plugged it in to try and diagnose what might be wrong with it, it worked. Then I changed it over to a 6309 inside of it, and it was very uncooperative, so there's a few bodge wires in there, but it's working fine now. I guess the first thing is the keyboard on the Color Computer 3 is actually pretty comfortable to type on. Feels pretty good, but it is a Mylar sheet in there that the keys press on, and that does dry out and kind of break over time. So I'm going to be proactive and change this now rather than when it does break. So I guess the first thing we have to do is get this keyboard out of this computer so we can start working on it. There we go. The keyboard is out. One of the biggest points of failure on these is always this strip that plugs into the motherboard here. Often it will crack right along where it kind of bends a bit, and then some of these traces will no longer make contact. So, first thing that we have to do with this thing is take out a million tiny little screws that are on here. So, let's do that. And here is what the inside of the CoCo 3 keyboard looks like. So, it's got this Mylar sheet, which is actually two printed circuits, one on the front, one on the back. And in the center, there is a divider. So you can see that there. This is the metal backing plate, which you do not need. Now, one of the important things, here's the keyboard, it's upside down. One of the important things when you're taking it off is lay it face down like this so that when you remove the back plate, none of the springs here go flying, because there's lots of little tiny springs attached. This is just all made up of little switches to go on top of there, and then the switches will be pressed by the springs, or by the keys pushing down against them. On the back, there is a switch, so you can switch between CoCo 3 and CoCo 2. Now, One thing that Rick has done that he includes now is you have a little piece that goes on there, which I think actually goes on this way, maybe, yeah. So that will go out of the bottom vent of your CoCo so that you will have a little switch on the bottom that you can turn that switch to CoCo 2 or CoCo 3. And if you remember what that does is it, the CoCo 3, I'll bring that up, as you can see on this keyboard, has the diamond shape of arrow keys, whereas the CoCo 2 has the up and down arrow keys on one side and the left and right keys on the other side. All right, let's install this. So it's quite simple to install. Just make sure all the springs are in place. Gently set this on top. Just got to line up the little holes there. Now, one thing is, of course, Rick includes with this all new screws for it. So you don't have to worry about reusing those 40-year-old screws that you just took out. All right, to screw this down, you don't want to screw it down tightly. According to his instructions, you will screw it down about 3 turns to start with. Once you have all the screws in, you flip it over, try pushing all the buttons, make sure they make a little bit of a clicky sound. And then it's time to put it back into your Color Computer 3. Now, one of the nice things about this too is that you now have an actual little PCB attached to a real ribbon cable to go into your keyboard connector. So you have to add your little switch, which will switch your computer between the CoCo 1 or CoCo 2 and CoCo 3 keyboard. Plug into the keyboard connector. Now it may have a little trouble sitting all the way down. If that's the case, just pull the little rubber piece off the top of this. So that's this piece here. Just pull it off of that stand. There you go. Put the screws back into your CoCo 3 and Bob's your uncle. However, before we get ahead of ourselves, one of the things that we do have to do is test out that the keyboard is working. So I've got it hooked up here. And it's simply hitting each button to see if they all work. Now, if you're finding that the buttons are a little hard to press or they double press or anything like that, then the thing to do is to go underneath the board and either tighten or loosen the screws around where that key is. And here we go with 2 CoCo 3s side by side. One has a clicky keyboard, one has the quiet click keyboard. See if we can hear it from here, from the microphone that I'm wearing. This one's definitely a lot quieter, but let's move the microphone right over to the keyboard. Well, I would definitely say, as advertised, this one is a lot quieter. So I think this is making a great addition to this CoCo 3 as I slowly expand it into my ultimate CoCo 3 computer. I've been playing around with the Quiet Click Keyfix 3 for a while. So what do I think? Well, I think both products, the Clicky one and the Quiet Click, are excellent products. They're comfortable to type on, they're responsive, they're easy to install, so definitely something that I think that you should think about investing in before that Mylar in your color computer goes. And of course, I will put a link to Rick's shop down in the description so you can get one of those, or even one of the other products that he sells, like for instance the other versions of the same board for the earlier CoCos, the CoCo 1 and 2. One thing about it though is that when I first got the clicky one, I loved it, and I still love it. But for practicality's sake, I think I'm going to switch keyboards and put the Quiet Click one in my daily use computer, just because when I'm doing things like recording videos or streaming on the CoCo Nation Game On Challenge Live, it's nicer to have the quieter keyboard not distracting if I'm especially if I'm playing a keyboard game, not distracting by having the clicking go out through my microphone. So yeah, I'm going to switch those keyboards around, and the Quiet Click is going to be my daily use one. All right, well, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, you know what you can do with the liking, the subscribing, and the commenting below, because anything and everything you do is always greatly appreciated. Until next time, see ya.